Okay. Now, all of you, can you see the screen here?
Yes, Shubhajit.
Okay. Just to summarize what we have done over the last four sessions, first two sessions were only about revising some basic concepts, some basic screeners, and some technical terms which we did. Uh, Third and fourth session we did study Benjamin Graham in detail. Whatever we are studying today, value investing, he is the forefather of that. So we studied Benjamin Graham in detail in the sessions 3 and 4. So all of you, if we have done some sort of revision over whatever we have done over the last 4 weeks, are you clear about that before we can proceed further?
Yeah, we are clear. From my end, I'm clear.
All right. Others are also clear, hopefully.
Yeah.
In case any of you have any kind of difficulty, uh, let me know either on the group chat, in the value investing, or in the chat panel here. All right. So if everything is clear, then we can proceed further.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We can proceed. We can proceed.
Okay, fine. Uh, so Graham had basically given us three kinds of stocks in which to invest, and he wanted that a total of 70 companies needs to be invested in, to have a reasonable margin of safety, and also to have the possibility of diversified returns. Just once again, let me open that chat panel if anybody. Yes, Rakesh, that's correct. This A51 is Rakesh, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Okay, yeah. So that's exactly what we did last time. And since all of you are clear now, now we proceed to someone known as John Marks Templeton. Now, John Marks Templeton was never per se a direct student of Benjamin Graham, unlike Walter Schloss or Warren Buffett. These were people who were direct students of Benjamin Graham. But the principles which were espoused by Benjamin, uh, Benjamin Graham, they were exactly the ones which were also espoused by John Marks Templeton. And in the value investing domain, he is one of the most respected people, apart from the legends we have already studied, like Benjamin Graham, and we later study Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett. These apart from these, John Marks Templeton has the greatest of standing. So first, I'll share a resource with you, all of you. I hope you can see the screen.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyone knows how to forward message from the
Yeah.
from
Open the file.
uh,
Can you open?
yeah, this one?
Yes, open.
One second. This one I want to
Yes,
forward.
yes, open. Just open that file.
Open the
Like
file.
that. Yes, yes.
It is, when opening it has downloaded.
Yes, just open that file. Download the file.
Yeah. Okay, it has opened now. Yes.
Uh, you just go to share here. You can find fourth button, share button. Or yes, left wall. That above, up arrow button.
Which one?
Up arrow. Fourth one.
Up.
Not this one. Up arrow. Yeah, that one. Yes. No, you have different. You should show share.
Okay. No, there must be some other way.
Or else, can you mail me? I'll forward that. Okay, or just you can mail me. I'll send it to.
Okay. What is your email?
Uh,
That I think I emailed you last time. Also. Okay.
yes.
I'm emailing you right now.
Yeah.
And you just paste on the group. Okay.
Sure.
Because I want the group to have this resource before we proceed further.
Okay.
Okay. Already.
RAKESH.
RA.
Yes. RAKESH. Type in here.
The
This one.
RA.
KESH.
This is getting RAKESH.
Yes.
S.
ICWA. ICWA.
ICWA.
Dot 1531
.1531
at gmail.com.
Gmail. John Templeton attachment.
Yeah.
John Templeton attachment.
So Apple has different mechanism, right? It's entirely different operating procedures.
Yeah. Where do I search for the? I want to search for the downloads, which I just had. You have to save.
Or else you can save as
I'll move to. So, okay. Now it is attaching. I'm sending it to you. And others, as soon as you receive it, we'll on the group we'll start the session. I've sent it to you, Rakesh.
Yeah, I'm checking. Still sending.
Oh, still sending. Not that heavy a file.
Yeah, got it. I got it.
Got it. Okay. Just share it on the group, huh?
Yeah.
WhatsApp group.
Yeah.
1 second, huh? 1 second. I'll just bring some water. 1 second.
Sure. Yeah, you can check when the WhatsApp has just posted. All of you.
Hello.
Yeah, I have posted. I shared in the group.
No. It's not a. Hello. Yeah, you shared it on the group, right?
Yes. Just a minute.
Yeah. Okay. And now you can see the screen as well. The screen.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can see.
All right. So John Marks Templeton, his entire investing philosophy, he has uh, he has put it in 12 nuggets, 16 nuggets. If we go through those nuggets, we'll come to know how far it aligns with Benjamin Graham. And remember all of you, from today onwards, we will be taking up the major investors who are derived from the Benjamin Graham school of thought until we finally finish with Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, who have evolved their own style of investment from Benjamin Graham, which is slightly different from what Benjamin Graham himself taught. Benjamin Graham didn't go for growth investing. He felt that growth investing was too uncertain to make investment decisions on. But Warren Buffett, his biggest contribution was that he came up uh, with his own investment style, which he amalgamated nicely with his mentor Benjamin Graham. So Warren Buffett is someone we'll study right at the end over the next 3 or 4 weeks, and we start with John Marks Templeton. Rakesh, kindly just make a uh, who all we'll be covering. Okay.
Okay, sure. Sure.
Yeah. So we'll be covering this today. We are covering John Marks Templeton.
Uh-huh.
Next session we cover Tobias Carlyle, TOBIAS, TOBIAS, CARLISL. Okay.
Okay.
Then we cover Walter Schloss, WERSCHLOSS, Walter Schloss, next session. Um, then we cover Seth Klaraman, SETHKLAMARAN, Seth Klaraman.
Just repeat that, no? Beg your pardon.
Which one?
The last one.
Seth Klaraman.
Why don't you just type it in the chat box?
That will be better.
Yeah, okay, one second.
I think we have in schedule right. So Kinsley, Lucas, Walter Shaws. I'm pasting it.
Mark Templeton. They are online. And finally, so these are our agenda for the next few sessions. Because all of you have understood Benjamin Graham, that's why we can proceed quite quickly to these. In fact, we need not even take one session per person. If all of you understand the basic philosophy, and you can yourself demonstrate it in a live case example, then we can do even two of them or even three of them in a single session. All right. Okay. Okay. So today let us take up John Mark Templeton. Now, who is John Mark Templeton and what is his history? I'm not going into so much of that because when it came to Benjamin Graham, I gave a brief about his history because he is so important. Right. Today, I'll only cover the investment philosophy of John Mark Templeton. Basically, these are all Great Depression era investors. They have seen the worst of the markets. They have seen world wars. They have seen the Great Depression, and they came up with their own investment style um, to collate with those times. And those times are like the worst times in history. So if we know those times, we can actually be thankful that today's market correction of 30% in 1 month is nothing at all. We shouldn't be afraid at all. There are many people who are getting very scared, and for that very reason, I have come up with these groups so that I can educate people that we have already been trailblazed by the people who were witnessing far greater disturbance, and still they came out successful and on top. So, if we follow the leadership shown by these people, our own investment portfolio would be just prospering. That's why we take up these masters in detail. Is that clear so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So John Mark Templeton, he was one of the pioneers for something known as uh, international international investing. Because prior to that, most of the investors in US, they were myopic. They just believed that the only safe economy in the world was US. Uh, Everything that was happening in above outside America, there was no point in even investing outside America. So this was the person, John Mark Templeton, who actually showed the world that that it is okay to in the it is okay to invest in the international market where you get far better returns as compared to what you are getting in the domestic market. But the only okay, Rakesh, this point is not there in the slide which we have opened in front of us. So just make a note of this point
Please.
that so his primary point, what he was well known for, John Max Templeton, is be open to investing in international market if the markets are well regulated.
International marketing, Indian markets.
Be open to invest in the international markets if the markets are well regulated in terms of accounts and laws, accounting and laws. I'll explain the statement. Just make a note of this and paste that or something.
Yeah. See, open to investing in Indian market.
Yeah. Be open to investing in international market.
Uh-huh.
In international markets,
Okay.
if if those are well regulated in terms of accounting rules and compliance. So this particular point is not there in the handout, so that's why I'm starting with this one.
Okay.
I've put it in the chat box.
Thank you.
So what do we mean by first of all, what do we mean by international investing? I'll give you an example. Today in India, why do we see so much of fluctuation? It is because whenever assets goes up, it is driven up by the foreign institutional investors. Okay. Hello.
Yeah. Following.
Yes, Shobhit,
Yeah.
please go ahead. Go ahead.
So the fluctuation happens because foreign institutional investors, if they see a good opportunity, they'll come in from anywhere in the world and pour in the money into the Indian market. And suddenly some rumor happens. They feel that stock exchanges are not safe. They suddenly pour out that same amount of money immediately. They have no restrictions. They can come in anytime. They can go anytime.
So what is the percentage of what is in percentage terms? How much is the volume of daily trades by FIIs here? Roughly, I mean, I know it might be very abstract question, but then to what extent I just want to understand is FII money on a daily basis impacting
For that, I'll give you a live example. Just open. I'm opening the screen. Are you able to see the screen here?
Yes, yes, yeah. And when you say FII investments, these are all through fund houses, right?
International fund houses.
International fund houses, okay.
Like for example, Harvard Endowment,
Fund, yeah.
Yale Endowment, Stanford Endowment Fund, then the insurance endowment funds of like top insurers of the world. These are the big investments who invest all over the world.
Okay.
And they have billions and billions, and they can freely invest because they have no and no world power places and restrictions on.
Oh, okay.
So I'll just give you an example of give the proportion ratio and proportion. Let Google search come. This is a site called Money Control. All right.
Yeah.
For BSE, what is the activity?
Okay.
And the question about that what is the percentage? So
Yeah.
in an idea of what is the percentage, we'll let the screen come. Okay. Now you can see that month to date they have pulled 58 crores from the market. Right. You can see this, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And domestic institutional investors like our uh, our domestic insurers, our bank funds, uh, our
Local fund houses,
insurance
huh?
company, local funds, local fund houses, they have poured in 48 lakh crores. Now, 58 lakh crores in terms of the market capitalization. Let us see this screen. BSE total market cap.
I thought that was 58,000 crores. No.
58,000 crores, yes.
Okay.
No, 58,000 lakh crores. Because there are total. Okay, just one second. I'll see this. How much it is? In rupees crores. Okay, this is not in lakh crores. This is rupees crores.
Yeah. That is the net. Net.
Yeah. So in terms of lakh crores, it is how much? 1 lakh crore, I think. Less than 1 lakh crores.
Correct. Yeah.
And if we see BSE total market cap, 58,000 crores divided by this value of okay. Note down this value, Amar. Or
112,49103.26.
this crores. Remember, 112.
1 crore 12 lakhs. Yeah.
112,49103. This is in crores.
Okay.
And what did we find there? How much we found over there?
58,000.
Oh, I close the
193. 58,000.
58,300. Huh?
Wait.
Okay. So how much? 58?
400.
58408.
58408.
408. Okay.
58408. Okay. Okay. So now you divide 58408 divided by this value. 112 this.
That's right. Even not 0.52%.
11249,105. 106. It is not even 1%.
Yes.
Yeah.
But in terms of Sensex, if we see then total market cap, if we see only Sensex, which is A grade stocks, that is how much? 10372. Only seeing A stocks, huh? 107 to 107, no, 10372 to 90. Okay. Now you calculate on this 50 that 408 divided by 70. You calculate the percentage.
So same.
How much?
0.56%.
So hardly anything. It should hardly make a difference. But
Yes.
in terms of weightage, it hardly makes a difference. But if we see the emotional impact of FII selling, many people sell along with the FIIs. So that's why the impact is much larger. And we always get news anchoring that FIIs have dumped so many shares and all. So it seems like a big deal, but it is not that big a deal. So,
Okay.
Amar, your question's direct answer is this: it is just 56. It is just 0.5% of total market capitalization, even of Sensex, which is only of 30 companies. So it should hardly make a difference, but it does make a difference more in terms of media headlines than anything else. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a beautiful insight. Thanks for that. Yeah.
Yes. Agree.
Okay. So now we initial state. So now if you understand what is international investing. So who invests in international markets? The big fund houses all over the world. They have lots of money and they want to take advantage of any opportunities. And any kind of danger, they even immediately flee those markets as well. So both ways it holds.
Okay.
So now we come to know in terms of now we know that if we want to invest in international markets, there are two rules to be followed. Understood? Two rules.
Yeah. Following me.
Yeah. So two rules are the accounting rules must be very. Why do we focus on accounting rules? It means that suppose Tata Steel. I'll take a hypothetical example. Tata Steel has come up with a financial statements. It's an international company. It has come up with the financial statements. Now, a company, if a company wants to invest in Tata Steel, if an FII wants to invest in, uh, obviously it will invest on the basis of its financial statements. All right. Now, how that a country's financial statements is reliable? If it doesn't have a well-defined set of rules under which it defines its accounting rules, obviously we will not have the confidence in the financial statements. But fortunately, that is not the case in India. India is party to an international accounting body known as International Financial Accounting IFAC, International Financial Accounting Confederation. So India is signatory to that. So whatever rules are there in the world, India also needs to follow that. So any company which is operating under Indian laws, they also need to follow the same compliance standards as anyone under IFAC. Is that clear so far?
Yeah.
So that's why India is pretty well defined in terms of accounting rules. But suppose we are talking about Ethiopia. Ethiopia doesn't have a well-defined accounting standards or accounting body. So even if a multinational company, say an agricultural company who is exporting uh, agricultural goods from that particular country, they were to prepare their statements, they will be looked at skeptically by the national investing community because they are not signatory to accounting rules. Am I clear so far? Okay. So that's why clarity in terms of accounting rules are very critical, so that we have confidence in the accounting statements of any company. And that's why John Marks Templeton, when he invested internationally, he started with Japan, he started with Europe. They are already advanced countries, they already have well set accounting system. He did not start it in India. India is still known as emerging market. India is not now, after all, India is the fifth largest economy of the world. India is not known as a developed market. India is still known as one of the emerging powers. Remember, it's not known as a developed power. So, so that time, John Mark Templeton said international investors should focus only on those markets like Japan, Germany, UK, Hong Kong, uh, or what other advanced economies are there? Can you give an example other than the few I have mentioned? Anyone type in? Yeah, Singapore, correct. Singapore, absolutely correct. Singapore,
Australia, New Zealand.
yeah, Australia, absolutely correct. Yes. Actually, basically, that's all. Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Japan, Hong Kong, and Europe. That's it. Canada is there. Canada is a big, well established market. Yeah, UK, correct. London, UK. So yes, that's absolutely right. Now he said these countries had well-defined accounting rules. Now, what do we mean by compliance? If before I explain compliance, does anybody have any kind of idea what is compliance? First of all, who ensures compliance? Before we ask what is compliance, who ensures that compliance? Yes, China is a regulated market. Who ensures that compliance? Can you hazard a guess?
For India, RBI.
No, SEBI.
Security Exchange, yeah.
For India, it is SEBI.
SEC, Security Exchange Commissions, yeah.
That is for USA. Uh,
SEBI.
then every stock exchange body has its own. Can you find out what is it for UK? Anyone? Who is the stock exchange regulator of UK? Anybody do search?
FSMA.
Who?
FSMA.
Type it in, please. What is the full form of FSMA? Oh, FSMA, okay. Financial Conduct Authority. Okay. FSMA full form you type it.
FSMA. Okay.
Anyone? Type it.
Yeah, it's done. Thanks.
Okay, financial.
Services and market sites.
Okay, fine. So every country which has a regulated market, they have these bodies who are controlling the stock market. And suppose they do not follow the compliance and they do not follow the rules, what happens? The companies will get delisted. Am I clear so far?
Yeah.
So these bodies like SEBI in India, uh, then SEC in USA, they have their own like RBI has agreement. Like RBI has agreement with European Central Bank, England Central Bank. So just like that, similarly the SEBI has agreement with SEC. SEBI has agreement with FCMA like that. So they are also internationally connected. These regulators, you can say. So
Okay.
So he said, John Marks Templeton, returning to John Marks Templeton, what we mean by compliance is it should have a well defined uh, body which controls the entire stock market. And the accounting rules of the country should be following a well defined set of rules, like India currently follows IFRS. Amar, you are in Singapore. What does Singapore follow? What kind of accounting standard does Singapore follow? Any idea?
IFRS and US GAAP.
It can't follow both.
Yes. Either one. Yeah.
It is. I think it is following US GAAP.
Okay, well, kindly do a Google research. Well, it is important for you to find out, because if you invest as an international VA, you need to find out what is the accounting body or accounting standard which it follows. So, because there's a big difference between US GAAP and IFRS.
Sorry, it
What
is based
about?
on IFRS. IFRS.
Are you sure?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So IFRS is actually the most popular in the world. Whether it is UK, whether it is Germany, I think 140 countries of the world follow only IFRS. No, Middle East is IFRS fully. That is, I'm absolutely sure of that, because I was in Middle East for 10 years. In Dubai, we used to prepare accounting statements based on IFRS. Dubai, I'm absolutely sure UAE follows IFRS. Rupesh, you are from UAE, is it? So Dubai is IFRS because when we were in I was in Jafza, you know Jafza. Jafza followed IFRS.
So Shubhadeep, in Singapore, we have a Singapore Financial Standards SFRS, which is a subset of IFRS. Okay.
Okay. It is a subset of IFRS. Similarly, India also has Indian accounting standards, but
Yes.
which is basically a substitute for IFRS.
Okay.
Like 99% of Indies, it is called Indies. Right now, it is Indies. It is 99% similar to IFRS.
Yes. Same here in Singapore as well.
IFRS is like the ruling body.
Yeah.
Rupesh, I don't know how you are seeing that part of Dubai can follow IFRS and part US can. This is very strange because UAE must have set laws, isn't it? One cannot just follow any law they like. How does Jabza follow IFRS and Dubai follow US GAAP? It's very strange. Is Jabza different or what? I'd like okay. Now You are American university, that's why it follows the US GAAP. But the companies, like 99% of the companies follows the IFRS. So now you have clarified it, Rupesh. Good. American university, it is obvious that since it is part of the US system, it follows. Now it is clear. Okay. So is it clear, everyone? Uh, what do we mean by regulated market and a proper company? So far, is it clear to everyone?
Yeah. And Shubhash has small doubts regarding my company. I'm working for Aslan. It is a US-based company, but we are operating from India. But we still follow US GAAP and IFRS both, depending upon the location. I support Netherlands, Euro companies, but we follow US GAAP for consolidation, Netherlands for local accounting, IFRS for local accounting.
Okay, okay. All right. Can you type in the company name? The chat box. All right. So, yeah, that is possible because if investors are primarily the US investors, it needs to prepare a statement as per US GAAP, and to follow local Indian laws, it needs to follow both IFRS as well. Luckily, something known as IFRS and convergence. So most of the points are now converging with each other. And 4 years, the FASB, which is the FASB, which is the Accounting Standards Board of the US, they are meeting with the IFRS. The IFRS body is they are converging their accounting standards, and the FASB has now made it mandatory that from 2022 there will be only IFRS. So that is because I am a CMA USA. We have been following this trend for the last 3 years. That FASB, yeah, Rakesh, you will also be knowing this. That
Yes,
if you do the webinars, you will know that we've been trying a convergence between US GAAP and IFRS.
IFRS, yeah.
Many of the webinars are just regarding that topic only. If you,
Yes.
if you follow the webinars.
Yeah. Agree.
Yeah. So luckily now the world is moving towards a single wholesome accounting standard, which is IFRS only. IFRS has some tricky issues like if we talk about in accounting terms, you cannot do the LIFO method. Do you know what is LIFO method? Anyone?
Last in, first out. In inventory, we do LIFO.
Yes, correct. Last in, first out method is not allowed under IFRS. That means you. What does LIFO do? I'm digressing into accounting standards, but this is interesting because it can kind of becomes a backbone behind whatever investing we do, because we need to understand what we are investing in first of all. So, Rakesh, can you give a small example of LIFO? What is exactly LIFO? And Amar, are you familiar with accounting terms?
Yes.
Okay. Rakesh, give a small practical example of what is LIFO.
Yeah.
Type it in. For example, perishable goods. LIFO is normally applied to perishable goods. Everyone, this is a short tutorial of LIFO, because we need to understand what kind of what kind of company we are investing in, because LIFO or FIFO makes a big difference to the financial statement of a company. All right.
So now, Shobhit, can you explain, or do you want me to take this?
No, you take this. You take this. I'm a little bit rusty in accounting standards, so just explain this.
Being as an employee, I'm buying some chemicals on 1st March. Is I can say 70 quantity and price is 40. Is it clear?
So
Again,
you said buy 60, isn't it?
60, yeah, 70 quantity, 70 quantity. On 1st March, I have bought 70 quantity of some raw material, price of 40. And again, 60 quantity, I'm taking date as 4th April. 4th April, and price is 20. In the month of May, I've sold 50 quantity. If you follow LIFO method, loss in first out, we have to take a price as a 20, the latest buy.
Okay.
There's the LIFO method.
Okay, so so calculate the profit here. Calculate the profit.
Yeah.
Calculate the profit as on 4th May, 2020.
Yeah, give it a minute.
Assume the sale. So sale price is probably 100 maybe.
Sale price is 100. Yes.
Yeah, you can assume sale 100, yes.
We need to show this example because there's a big difference between LIFO and FIFO. That's why companies which follow FIFO will have an entirely different profit to show as compared to LIFO. So after this LIFO example, for the same example, I'll ask Rakesh to do FIFO. So that profit difference will be clear to everybody. And that makes a huge difference. Okay, Rupesh, how did you get 400? Can you show the calculation, please? Anybody show the calculation on the chat box?
No, assuming
Assuming what?
I would
Rupesh,
say assuming
yes.
he has, suppose he's holding a total quantity of 70 plus 60, okay, which is
Yes.
130
130.
quantity.
Yes.
And the total price he has paid for it is 4,000, because 70 into 4 plus 60 into 12 is 4,000, okay, and he has sold something for
17 to 4, 17 to 40, isn't it?
17 to 40, sorry, 17 to 40 and 16 to 20. So he's got a 130 quantity at 4,000, and he sold 50 for 5,000, and his profit is 1,000, and the remaining quantity left is 70 plus 110, 70 plus 10, 80. 70 with the price of 40 and 10 at a price of 20.
Are you sure you are following the LIFO method or you're following the FIFO method?
LIFO, because his last purchase was 60 at 20. So if he has sold 50 out of it, so he's still got 10 remaining for a price of for a cost price of 20 that he bought, right?
Okay. Can you explain your firstly firstly, Rakesh, you explain your example. Then we cross check with Amar whether he's correct or not.
Yeah, see, yes, my purchase is sale is 50 units to 100,
Yes, 5,000.
5,000
Okay.
sale,
Yeah.
and the life as per LIFO method, we have to take a latest purchase. So
Yeah.
50 units into 20 purchase price, so 1,000 cost. So
Yeah.
profit is 4,000.
So profit is 4,000. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And what
Oh,
did
yeah.
so what did Amar say?
What is taking average method? I think. Correct, Amar?
No. I think my calculation was wrong because 60 which he's having is still in inventory. It is not in PNL, right? So his the profit is based only on the items that have been sold.
Yeah, cost of goods sold. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, correct.
So the 50 that he sold, that the cost price of that is only 1,000. So his profit on that 50 sale is 4,000. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes
If you
sense.
do FIFO method, the profit will be 3,000.
How?
It says 50, and we will take first in first out. What is the first purchases? 40 cost, and I'm taking 50 quantity.
Okay.
His profit will be 3,000. Correct. Yeah.
Make sense to everyone? FIFO method?
Yes. Okay. So you see that there's a big difference between LIFO and FIFO. FIFO kind of depresses actually LIFO depresses the profit
Yes.
and saves taxes, but here it is the opposite which we are seeing. But normally what we see in LIFO, it reduces profits and saves taxes.
Yes,
But
agree. Yeah.
Which is
uh,
better? Which is better, LIFO or FIFO?
No, it depends on, I think, the price of the raw material, right?
Yeah.
You might.
We did a partial calculation because we have to include inventory and everything. If you take all those things consideration, we LIFO is the best method to make the profits.
actually LIFO reduces the profits because in inflationary market your price would always be higher. So that's why your uh, suppose earlier price is 30 and current price is 40. So you will be reducing much more profit in the in LIFO, and that way you'll be saving taxes. So in inflation, remember this: in inflation, LIFO uh, is greater than FIFO uh, in terms of
Yes.
uh, no, FIFO is greater than LIFO in terms of
You mean FIFO profits are greater than LIFO profits?
yes.
Okay.
One second.
Company
LIFO,
usually try to project the maximum profits in their account, in their balance sheets.
not necessarily. Uh, Not necessarily because they want to save taxes as well, and that's why because the whole purpose of LIFO is to avoid taxation. So what do you do if you have low profits? Uh, you have low taxation as well. So LIFO becomes a mechanism to avoid tax.
But the valuation of that company will also go if the profits and incomes will go down, profits will go down. The market will also respond to that.
Yeah, it is a balancing act. Correct. How uh, how far you follow the LIFO method, and remember, inflation is also not that consistent. Also, so suppose like you consider a commodity like oil, which is normally highly inflationary. If it is going at for $50, $70, $130, suddenly it comes down to $20, then LIFO will wreak havoc to your with your whole thing. So inflationary thing is also not very reliable in terms of terms of profitability, especially where the thing is not consistent.
So it's
There's
in the
always
company's
a
hand. Yeah.
so LIFO reduces profits when during inflation. Why it reduces? Because your latest price is always higher than your earlier price. Suppose your latest price is 80 rupees, your earlier price is 40 rupees. You are reducing 80 rupees from your cost of goods. If your as cost of goods sold, so if sales price is 100 rupees, you are reducing 80 rupees instead of 40 rupees. That's why you are reducing far more in terms of cost of goods sold. That's why your gross margin is also lesser.
Yes, 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 clearly.
Because
Okay.
as management
So
accountants,
as a
we studied this
so
in
my
detail.
question to you, is midway. So assuming this year, right, and assuming that crude has gone down, right,
Yes.
and at its all-time lows.
Yeah.
Now, if
By the
I
way,
am a
by the way, how much it is less than $35 now, isn't it?
27, 28, I think.
Yeah, it's around 30. It's roaming around 30.
30, yeah. But
Oh, that's quite low.
correct, yeah.
What you were saying, Umar?
My question is, so halfway through the year, if I want to, can I decide to move from LIFO to FIFO?
No, you cannot. Because you have to be consistent. If you are consistently following LIFO, you must follow LIFO. If you are consistently following FIFO, you need to follow FIFO. You cannot suddenly shift the accounting because the inventory mechanism, everything is based on FIFO. Suddenly you shift to LIFO, you have to recalculate everything. That is not possible, and you cannot shift as per your convenience. There's a lot of uh, accounting standards involved. Like
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
you
Is
cannot do it.
IFRS allowing us to do that, or IFRS is
No.
strict to
First of all, IFRS doesn't allow FIFO at all. Only
doesn't allow LIFO?
IFRS doesn't allow LIFO. Only US GAAP allows both LIFO and FIFO. But US GAAP also says that if you are consistently following FIFO, if you switch over to LIFO, you need to give a detailed statement of accounts of why you are doing it. You need to give a reason to your investors of why you are doing it. You cannot just say, simply for your convenience do it and say I've done it because I feel like it. No, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, but then I have seen companies reporting on this change in their inventory valuation, saying they had to purchase more because they were because that say for instance this crude is a scenario,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I would say since it's a non-perishable thing, and I want to buy more and inventorize, right? So I might have that as a uh, reason to change from FIFO to LIFO, because uh, I want to basically maximize on the price that is available as well as maximize my profits. So is there could be a reason where it might be genuinely uh, it might be genuine for me to move from FIFO to LIFO in order to show profits, because otherwise I might, if I had to basically sell my stock at probably $40, probably my inventory which I bought 2 months back was at $70 per barrel.
Yeah.
Probably today I can't even sell at $40 because actually if I follow FIFO, then I'm selling at loss. But what I'm saying is I want to basically buy it at 30 and sell it at 40 today, and still I want to show as I have made $10 business, right?
Yeah, correct. So
I could,
if you have the reason, then FASB will allow. IFRS doesn't allow anyway. So only this only holds in with FASB, not with IFRS.
okay.
Because remember, IFRS doesn't at all allow LIFO.
But what is the impact of changing to LIFO and inventory valuation is high? So when my inventory valuation is high, so my current ratio goes for a toss, or my current ratio is also high?
No, you don't talk in terms of inventory. You talk in terms of the so you are saying you shift from FIFO to LIFO when the inflation is high.
Yes, when there is a deflation, because in this case,
When there's a deflation, okay.
because
When
in
there
this
is
case,
a
I would have purchased my oil at $70 per barrel
yes.
3 months back, and today I want to keep selling it, but buy it at 30 and sell it at 40 and make that this thing. And from a book's point of view, I still show profit,
Yes.
and my inventory value is high. Although my inventory should have gone low, the inventory valuation is still high, right? Inventory is part of the current assets, right?
Yes, inventory is part of current assets, correct. No, how does your inventory remain high? Can you explain? Because if your value is down, then your inventory value is also down. No? Suppose you're valuing your
I would have,
inventory at suppose you're valuing your inventory at $30. Your stock is now valued at $30. So
no,
actually,
but I'm
current
not
asset
saying,
goes down.
no, but I have sold my stock which I have recently purchased at 30,
Yes.
right? But my old inventory is still, I'm holding it at $70.
But your old inventory is also repriced at $30 when you're moving
I
to
wouldn't want to
LIFO.
revalue. I wouldn't want to. Otherwise, then if I want to revalue, then I'll have to take a hit in my.
You cannot do part ways of both. You have to follow one fully. You have if you are following LIFO, you have to follow LIFO fully. If you are doing FIFO, you have to follow FIFO fully. You can't do you cannot do part ways for both the inventory. If you are doing LIFO, you have to fully follow LIFO. And that your entire inventory valuation would be on $30 remaining inventory. And if you are following FIFO, the entire inventory would be at $80. So you cannot do part ways for both. That way, it is not possible. Rakesh, am I correct on this? Because
Yes, sir. Absolutely correct. Yeah, we can't do partial. Rules cannot accept.
this is not our this is not something which we can arbitrarily do. If we are doing LIFO, it is fully LIFO. If we are doing FIFO, it is fully FIFO. There's no on that.
Yes, that's true.
Then current assets. Why? Because inventory value goes down. Am I clear, Amar?
Inventory, okay. No, I thought LIFO and FIFO is just the way in which you basically manage inventory, right? Manage inventory, right?
No, this is LIFO and FIFO are ways of inventory accounting, and it is the most critical of a manufacturing company. It won't matter to a service company because they don't have inventory anyway. It doesn't matter to them.
Yeah.
In a manufacturing company, LIFO and FIFO are the most important things.
Say in this example which Rakesh gave, if he has sold 50 of the stock that he bought for $20, right? And what will be his end of month inventory out of 60 plus 70 plus 60?
Rakesh, can you calculate that? What is your end month inventory, for example?
One second, sir. I'll do that.
This part is very critical. That's why I'm spending a lot
Sorry,
of
guys,
time.
I'm just taking 2 more minutes. Sorry for the rest of the folks. But if it is not something very important, then we can proceed.
No, this is very important. In fact, your entire profitability integrity is upon this point only. That's why I'm also spending so much time on this, because many people are not aware of accounting. I think Sarosh, are you there? Is Sarosh there?
Yes, I'm there.
So I think, Saroj, you are not so much aware of accounting, isn't it? That's why
No,
this is
I'm
like
not
a.
aware. No,
So
no.
this is
Only
like
I have
a.
heard of this.
So that's why, Saroj, this is a inventory accounting refresher course for you.
Okay,
But you
okay.
are also you as a Tata Motors manager, you are also aware of this system of LIFO and FIFO
Yeah.
because any inventory thing is also accounted in any company like that only. So India also
Yes.
follows
Yes.
FIFO. Indian accounting standard and Tata Motors also follows FIFO.
LIFO and
So,
FIFO
In
are
this
a
case,
part of P&L, profit and loss statement, or what?
LIFO
LIFO and
is
FIFO.
it is part of PNL, it is part of balance sheet both.
Okay.
Sorry. Once again.
Rakesh, kindly give explain your example in terms of LIFO.
Yeah. Just maybe some.
I just want to understand what will be the ending inventory as per his example. To me, his closing inventory will be 70 quantity at 40 base price plus 10 at 20, which is 2800 plus another 200, 2000, 800 plus 200, 3000, correct?
1 second. I'm calculating it.
Rakesh, please put your calculation basis on the chat box also.
Yeah.
Yeah, 80 at 80 and 3000, right? And what will be as per FIFO?
Firstly, LIFO, how you calculated that, Rakesh?
Let me clarify you. While we are calculating inventory, so we will not take a sales price. We will take a cost price. We will take a cost.
Correct.
Yes. So that
Correct.
you have to make a note.
Yeah.
So now the calculation will change. If I'm calculating inventory, then the closing stock will be like this.
No, as per FIFO?
I'm telling you.
Firstly, LIFO calculation you put on the.
Yeah, I understood. I understood the LIFO calculation. Fine.
I didn't understand this one. So just put it on the just put it on the chat box, Rakesh.
Sure. Yeah.
We spend as cost accountants, we spend a lot of time on this. CMA USA entire first part of CMA USA is based on this only. Rakesh.
Yes. I'm on it.
Yeah. Okay. Paste.
For FIFO, it will be 2000. Yeah.
You posted on the WhatsApp group.
I'm correct. Closing stock is 3000. So this is my whole calculation of 1800 plus 200 is equal to 3000. This is my inventory. I am going to post quantity and price.
So 70 into 40 plus 10 into 20.
Sir, this is a FIFO closing stock. Hope you understand.
Okay.
So first two parts are purchases and 15 sales. 50 into 20 is a LIFO price and 1000 is a total and 200 is balance. From April total 200 balance and 200 from March sale. The total together to 3000. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Again.
Yes.
Okay.
This is LIFO.
This is LIFO, right?
LIFO. I'm going for FIFO.
Yeah.
Simple. 40, 2000 minus 2000. Balance will be 800 plus 200. 800 plus 1200. 2000 closing stock. This is 54.
So closing stock is valued at 2,000 for LIFO.
Yeah, 5454.
54.
For FIFO.
Yeah, it could. So this is probably not an ideal case, but then
What is the profit difference?
1000.
the
Okay.
profit
want to
difference
know-
will be 1,000 because of the valuation. If you do it as per FIFO, your profit will be 2,000, and if you do it as per LIFO, I
Yeah.
think the profit was 3,000, right?
So in terms
What
of
about 3000?
For LIFO, the profit was 4,000, and as per FIFO, the profit is 3,000.
But that is not the case. We have to calculate the profit. It will include everything. But that is a different scenario.
No, that's where the profit
so, in this example,
is adjusted between the inventory valuation, right?
Yeah.
so in this example, LIFO profit is greater than FIFO profit, isn't it?
Yes.
Because we are seeing a deflation. That's why
Yes. You're right. Prices increased.
prices decreased.
I mean, increasing in terms of cost, I think. I mean to say.
In terms of cost. Okay.
Yes, Dipesh, you're right.
Yeah. So non-accountants here understand this part because this part is a big difference in terms of compliance, which we were talking about. In compliance, we need to talk about whether. One second. Go back to that part. Accounting rules, you must clearly say whether you are following FIFO or LIFO. Because if you 1 year you follow FIFO, next year you follow LIFO, that doesn't work out. You cannot do that. There must be very strict compliance between whatever you are following, and not only compliance but also consistency. Only in exceptional status you can switch over. Am I clear?
Yes.
Okay. So now we have understood that international markets are possible. International investments are possible only when there are good accounting rules, very clear accounting rules, and there's a very clear compliance with the stock market regulator, like SEBI in India, SEC in US, like that. Now we proceed on to his other 16 rules. I think the amount of time we have taken will not be 16 rules today. But still, I'll try to complete as much as possible. Always go for real return. Now, Rakesh, whatever I'm telling you, kindly take notes and paste on the chat group as well as put it on your Word file as well. All right.
Sure. Yeah.
And mark this as session 5 after Benjamin Graham and after all the other sessions. Session 5 notes you mark that on your Word file. All right.
Yeah.
Session 5, John Marks Templeton. Rule number 1 is that international rule which I told you.
Accounting rules of the country will be very clear, right?
As per compliance and accounting standards, yes.
As per
be open to invest in international markets as per compliance and accounting standards if both of them are very clear. There should be clear compliance standards and accounting standards for any international country.
So accounting rules of the country will be very clear as per compliance and accounting standards.
Yeah, correct. Okay, rule number 2, invest for maximum total real return. Now, what is real return? Real return is, suppose, I'll give you an example. Uh, we are having stocks of 10 lakhs, and after 1 year, we sell the stock for 11 lakhs. Okay, am I clear so far?
Yeah.
So, what is the nominal gain? Nominal gain is 1 lakh rupees. Now, but that nominal gain of 1 lakh rupees really doesn't matter as long as you have to deal with inflation, you have to deal with taxes. So, you want to know what is your real returns. So, in terms of nominal returns, what is 1 lakh divided by 10 lakhs? How much is it? 10%. Rakesh, Amar, others, are you clear so far?
Yeah. We're following.
Yes.
So, how much is return after 1 year? 10%.
Yes.
Suppose inflation for this year was 4%.
Okay.
So your inflation, your return net of inflation is 6%.
Yes.
And people who have studied economics, they'll know that what is difference between nominal return and real return. So real return is always net of inflation. So 4% is anyway reducing now from your 10%. So your real return is 6%. Okay.
Yes.
And that 10% will also carry 30% 30% tax.
Yeah.
So
3%.
that is another 3%. So your actual return is 10% minus 4% for inflation minus 3% for taxes. Your real return is only 3%.
Yes.
So Rakesh, please note this down.
Yes, tell me.
Your actual return is equal to total return minus inflation minus tax. Kindly note this down and paste it in the chat panel as rule number 2.
Total returns minus inflation. Total returns minus.
Total returns is total return. Actual return is equal to total return minus inflation minus tax.
Okay.
Actual,
Minus taxes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Please paste the formula on the video.
Yeah. One second.
Correct. So any investor, the rule of John Marks Templeton, rule number 2, is that any investor go for actual, not just nominal returns, because returns doesn't matter. If you are giving away the whole thing to taxes and inflation, only those opportunities which give you maximum total real return, not nominal returns. Am I clear, everybody?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, suppose mutual funds tell you, now in terms of mutual funds, another thing, Rakesh,
Yes.
just add one more part of the equation if for mutual funds. Just do actual returns in bracket mutual funds. Actual returns mutual funds will be this equation minus mutual funds fees also.
Yeah, makes sense.
Inflation minus tax minus mutual fund fees.
Mutual fund fee, right? Fees.
This is actual return for mutual funds. Now this, yes. Now suppose a mutual fund person tells you mutual fund sahi hai and all that they very nicely advertise. But whether mutual fund is actually sahi hai or not, you need to calculate yourself. Uh, Average market return is 8%. All right.
Okay.
Indian inflation over the last 3 years has been 3%. Okay,
Okay.
3%. Hello.
Yeah, following Shubhajit.
Yeah. So 8% minus 3% will be your inflation. 30% of 8%, 2.4% will be your taxes.
Yeah.
And mutual fund fees is minimum around 3%. So now you calculate actual returns. So 8% minus 3% minus 2.4% minus 3%. How much is that? How much negative?
Negative, 0.6% or something. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's the whole thing. With your mutual fund, with your mutual fund fees, you are actually losing out money in real terms. You say mutual fund fee hai, but actually बिल्कुल सही नहीं.
Mhm.
If
So,
if
in
people,
general, what
if
is Shubhajit?
if anyone understand Hindi, you can say mutual funds बिल्कुल सही नहीं.
So, so you mean so you're not encouraging mutual funds, right?
If you are aware of the stock market principles, you don't invest in mutual funds. Mutual
Yeah.
funds is only for beginners who don't know anything about their investments, who don't know how to do research, who don't know anything. That's why my purpose is to educate you enough so that you become good investors in your own right, so that you don't lose your valuable money.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. Mutual funds बिल्कुल सही नहीं है.
I
All
agree
right.
with
I'm with you on that, Shubhajit.
I agree. Me too.
I have not invested in mutual funds. In fact, I've burnt my fingers, but I've stopped.
Oh, already.
And second rule, okay, third rule: invest but don't trade or speculate. Now, there's a difference between investing and trading and speculating. Uh, suppose suppose I'll give you one example, simple example for this. All right. Uh, I am investing in Tata Steel shares. Now, if I am a value investor, minimum holding period, which I'm explaining from the first year onwards, minimum
1 year.
holding period
1
is
year.
only 1 year. Minimum 1 year. Not it can be 3 years, it can be more, doesn't matter. It shouldn't be any one day, even less than 1 year. So suppose I am a value investor. Worst comes to worst, I'll not sell the stock before 1 year because I've already done my research. After doing the research only, I have done that investment. Okay. Now, what does that is a true value investor. But what does a trader say? I have invested in Tata Steel today because I'm hearing very good things about the company. Tomorrow, the chairman of the board sues another member of the team. Actually, happened in Tata Steel. That Tata Group they chucked out Cyrus. If you remember the Tata saga altogether. So if suddenly that happens, tomorrow I exit my investment. So this kind of thing is not really an investment. It is trading. Today I hear one news, I invest. Tomorrow I panic, I take it out. That is not investment really. It is trading. Did you understand? Did you understand the difference? And
Yes, yes.
and speculating is even worse. Today we are talking of shortening time. So value investing is 1 year, trading is 3 or 4 days, and speculating is 1 hour. So studying the technical charts. First of all, I hate technical charts, so I'm not going to explain you what are technical charts. But I am going by the technical chart. There is Mojo or Dojo or something like that, and I'm seeing red and I'm seeing green. I'm seeing candles. So I'm investing in stock for that. After 15 minutes, the Mojo changes, and I exit that stock. So that is pure speculation. It is not even trading. That is pure speculation. So, did you understand the difference between investing, trading, and speculating? All of you.
Yes, yes, yeah.
That is the main difference.
Purely without research, we are buying and selling stock in speculation.
Yeah, we are only Dojo and Mojo, and that can change even in 15 minutes time because we don't know how the market is going to behave. If we are going by candles, that can change even in forget 15 minutes. It changes every second. There can be huge differences in the candles every microsecond also because there are so many thousands and millions of investors in the market. So that kind of analysis is pure speculation. That is not even investment. That is not even trading.
So I have a question here.
Yeah.
So in my so can I get an understanding? I mean, if I want to see investment portfolio of all the investors in Tata Motors, for instance, right?
Yeah.
How many of them are long-term investors? How many of them are? But when I say they are invested in Tata Motors, does any index or any sort of screener kind of a platform show me that okay, the
I don't think
total
any.
investment, the
I don't think
composition
any.
is 50% is value investor, 20% are traders, and
No,
you
no,
know
no, that kind of investment that is not possible. No, Rupesh is correct. It's not possible.
how do I basically classify a stock as highly speculative? Even if I have basically gone through the value investment strategies, I've implemented them in selecting that stock. How do I make sure that
Amar,
the speculators are not involved in that stock?
no, Amar. One thing, you need to care about one thing. If you have researched your stock, if you've done research about your stock, no matter how much, uh, even if 90% of the world is speculating, it doesn't bother you because you've done so much of your research. You're so confident about your stock. Even if 99% are speculators, it doesn't bother you because you are 100% confident about the future of the company based on your thorough research. So it doesn't matter who are speculators, who are traders, who are actual investors. It doesn't matter at all. And remember,
There should be some relation, right? There should be some relation because end of the day, the management of the company is somewhere sort of working towards ensuring that the stock price is going up, right? And ensuring that there is enough value given to the shareholders, right?
only partially. They want to do that only partially because there's a very important aspect of investing, or there's a very important investing per se. It is cash flow returns. So when you are owning the company, you are getting the cash flow of the company. So when you are owning equity stake in the company, whatever is the company,
Uh-huh.
whatever the company is earning, you are getting a part of that. You are being part of the growth of the company. You are being part of the real value of the company. You are being part of it. So
So that is in terms
that's
of
why
dividends that they pay, right?
it is in terms of dividends. It is in terms of share buyback. Dividend is important for owner.
You can also check this by shareholding pattern. You can check the shareholding pattern. If the maximum
So
shares are held by the promoters or by FIS or by general public.
But where do you get that information?
It's available. It's available. You go to the Rediff mail, you check the shareholding pattern, or you go to the moneycontrol.com. From there, you can also get this data.
Really? You get this data. Okay, let us see one example.
You go to the money control, or you go to the Rediff mail. You go to the Rediff mail.
But shareholding pattern will say how much is owned by promoters,
Yes.
how much is preferentially owned, right?
How much is held by banks and FIs? How much is owned by general public?
Okay, one
This
second.
data is available.
You can see the screen. So shareholding.
Okay. Which is part of the compliance part from SBI perspective also, right? SBI also needs to basically give this information out.
So I need to see. I need to see because I was a Jamshedpur person, so I need to see what is the shareholding pattern of Tata Steel. See.
So, you log into rediffmail.com.
Okay, Tata.
Okay, does the shareholding pattern say anything about how speculative that stock is? Is my question.
If it is, if the holding is more than 10% or greater to the general public, and the number of shares are large in abundance, then it's a speculative share. I think so. It's biased personality.
Let's see example.
Yeah. If you see the Tata Steel, the Indian promoter is 33.12%, and banks and FI is 15.14%.
Where are you seeing that?
I'm seeing on rediffmail.com.
Ready-made.
Yeah, rediffmail.com. On money control, if you check it out on Rediff, then I'll tell you on money control also.
I have opened money control here.
Money control, you type this Tata Steel.
Yeah, I'm already on that screen.
Tata Steel, na? Just.
So Tata Steel Private Limited, Tata Investment, Tata Motors, Tata Chemicals, they are the main shareholders of.
No. You click on to Tata Steels, and you scroll down your to the bottom of the screen. Just come down to the ekdam total bottom of the screen.
Just 1 second. Just 1 second. Hold the line.
Then the top shareholders and promoters holding. Quick links. Completely scroll down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Quick links. Yeah. Quick links. Yeah. Quick links. Information. Promoter holding and top shareholders. You click on promoter holdings. Information.
The last one.
The last one. Yeah. You click on the promoters holding. There's a complete list of how many Tata Sons Private Limited number of shares holding. Scroll down. Yeah, now. Shareholding belonging category, total number of shares, pledged shares also. You can also see the pledge shares also.
So these are only promoter holdings, right?
These are the promoter holdings. And if you check the top shareholders, you can also check mutual fund holdings. You can also check large bulk deals, and all links are available.
It is top shareholders.
Yeah.
No, overall, you see shareholding, na? Shareholding, I think.
It's a complete detail report. But if you go to the rediffmill.com, you will get a comprehensive summarized total.
Nice. So is that that's such a where is it? Shareholding pattern itself. Here.
Okay. So
The-
32.33
Yeah.
promoters pledged FIIs and FPIs. Foreign, what is FPI?
Well, let's see.
And DII is 36.8, which means secondary market, right?
DI is a domestic market,
Domestic
I think.
investors, yeah.
Yeah, which is
foreign investors.
okay. Which is traded in Sensex, right? That 36.8% of the shares can be traded in BSE, correct?
Yeah. Even FIS can be traded in BSE.
Only by FIIs, right?
Even general public can. General public has a 16.99% shares.
Where is it written?
I'm checking out
Others.
on rediffmill.com.
Oh, okay, okay. But yes, is also okay.
Others. Yes, others must be generated.
Okay.
Yeah, others can be general.
So is there, so okay, I mean, we know that the data is there. Is there some sort of a yardstick or some sort of a number to say that, okay, if it is owned by promoters to this percentage, or, mutual funds holding to this percentage, means it is a,
The value investing.
not just value investing, probably you can look at it as a non-speculative stock. Whether it is a value investing stock or not, I don't know, but it could be looked up in as a non-speculative
Actually,
share, right?
higher promoter share, more non-competitive. Promoters will believe in the company. The company believe in the.
So the promoter shareholding as per SEBI is, I think, 65% or 70%. That's the minimum percentage that any promoter can hold.
Maximum percentage, you mean, right?
Maximum percent.
Maximum percentage that any company's promoter can hold is, I think, 65 or 70% as per SEBI. I'm not sure. They have a guidelines, the minimum number of share that any promoter can hold.
I think it's 71 or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Higher
the
promoter holding, less speculative.
yeah.
So now that.
But you could also say that the higher the holding, the less speculative it is, because the market is not interested, right? Very less is owned by general public.
Less owned by the general public is much more trading happens because many more people are interested to hold that share because they know that it is. That's why. So these kind of shares have high liquidity.
Okay.
You know it is safe.
You mean high holding promoters will be high liquidity shares, right?
Yeah, because promoters are showing their faith in the company, isn't it? They know
To
that.
give you an example of this, recently this Patanjali has taken over the soya industries. Now, if you check this promoter holding is 98% in that company. The stock rises from 3 rupees. Now its current price is out, I think 150 rupees.
Oh,
3 rupees to 150 rupees.
3 rupees to 154 rupees. Ruchi Soya Industries.
Wow.
And if you check its promoter holding, it's 98% is a promoter holding.
So you can be so sure that market places so much trust in the company because why? Because the owner themselves places trust in the company.
It has recently taken over and he has procured all the shares in the market and he's continuously procuring it.
So nice.
so if he's increasing his stake, so Patanjali is increasing their stake in Ruchi, you are saying,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. They have already taken up the complete stake in that. The case was in NCLT, and in NCLT they went and they bid for that company, and from the 3 rupees now it's within a 1 month now it's priced 154 rupees. Current price is 154 rupees.
So Ruchi
And
Soya, is
Ruchi,
it?
Ruchi Soya Industries.
which was already listed in Sensex, right?
Yeah. Ruchi was already listed. Ruchi listed long back, but it went to the NCLT because of its defaults from the banks. Patanjali bid for this company, taken over it, and from 3 to 154, it always open on a this
Circuit breaker, huh?
5%.
Every day there is a circuit breaker.
Yeah. Circuit breaker. It opens every day on a circuit breaker.
Shubhodeep, is it artificial increase or what? Or are they wanted to increase in the share value?
What artificial increase?
Are they wanted to increase the share value, which is Soya company? Are they wanted to increase the share value or what? Because span of 1 month, 3 to 150 is a very huge hike, right?
Yes, correct. It is unreasonable. You need to check whether the cash flow justifies this kind of increase in price. That's why it calls for more research.
Hmm.
Because as value investors, remember, we cannot go by the flow of emotions. What goes down 50 times in 1 month can also go down 100 times in 1 month. So remember that is not our function as value investors. We cannot go by emotions. Uh, if we want to invest in a company, we need to do our own thorough research, and that's what we will be following the Benjamin Graham principles and the principles by. So that's why I remember until we reach that level of competency based investing, we know for sure that we are very thorough about our research. And what are the pointers of the research? We'll be explaining in the weeks to come. We already have some of the ideas, like we already have the screeners which we took from the first session, the Benjamin Graham screeners. We know some of the things, but there's a lot more to know before actually investing in individual companies. Is that understood?
Understood. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
All these
I
questions,
think these are very interesting discussions, and I think we need to keep this.
Actually, I'll be ending on this point because I want you all to absorb whatever we have learned today.
Digest.
Remaining points that are there, we'll continue on explaining the John Templeton points in detail tomorrow as well. So tomorrow can all of you come a little early, say 7:30?
Yeah, sure.
I'm okay.
But Shubhajit, I'm completely on for this. But I just wanted to know your perspective on these algorithmic trading platforms and all which have come up today. You know,
Very
automatic.
frankly, I'm biased against it because if you get an answer from me, it will be a totally biased answer because I'm totally biased against it because I do not I do not support the fact that company rather than trading. Trading can give you very you can also lose
More
overall
often,
market
yeah.
scenario is
More
never
often you lose.
market scenario is not in your hand. But when you research of value investing over 1 year, over 2 years, things play out much differently than what it plays out in 2 days.
Yeah. But these markets which we are talking about as value investment potentials, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Are also suffer the wrath of market, right? Market sentiments and everything. Yeah. They also go through this wrath of.
They go through the rut. That's why they always have margin of safety. Remember, when you are purchasing 100 rupees share for 40 rupees, you are already keeping that 60 rupees as margin of safety because you know that
Okay.
already know that the company is already 100 rupees. You are only anyway purchasing it for 40 rupees. You are not purchasing a 100 rupees company for 200 rupees. That's the difference. That's why we
Mhm.
are. That's why value in successful because already the downside risk is taken care of. Because you know that even if it goes down, you don't lose much because the price is
I'm so
already
surprised.
factoring in.
Yeah, I'm so surprised that why wouldn't a trader? Why? How has this stock escaped a trader's eye, right? Because trader is also looking at somewhere in. I mean,
The
somewhere
traders perspective is
analogy
completely
is
different.
about
Traders
not
perspective
a
is completely
speculator, not speculator, but
even
I'm
trader.
talking about a
No,
trader who.
that's what 3 day time horizon. In 3 days, do you think you can understand much of the company? Do you think you can do that in 3 days? You invest and you take out research much about the company, or do you even care about the company in that way?
It's
Whether you
basically
get dividend
speculation,
or not
news
doesn't
based.
matter.
Yeah.
Speculation, news based driven stocks.
It's purely fear or it is purely greed. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. So
No, in my
tomorrow,
in my view, it was like if not value investors in the midterm horizon, there are also other investors, right? Not value investors, but the other guys who probably have every you are you saying every person who is looking at a mid to long term investment horizon
yeah,
would look at value picks only, right?
correct.
And he wouldn't look at
Speculation.
non-value based picks which do not fit the thing. I mean, which do not
Because
fit
we
the
are
uh,
because
example you
as
said
value
that it doesn't have the margin of safety or anything.
yeah
Probably he would, right?
right because as value investors we need to minimum lock in our investment for 1 year. So we need to do our research so thoroughly that we'll pick up only those stocks which are following the principles of value investing. Otherwise, we'll not pick it up.
Okay, makes
Understood?
sense. Okay.
So tomorrow we continue our discussion. We start with rule number 4.
What time tomorrow?
7:30.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Okay then. Good night. Good night.
Good night. Good
Okay,
night,
good night.
everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Well, if you could
Good night.